This is Surviving as a Civilian. I am your host, Scott. With the help of my friend Andrew, we created this podcast to share success stories of combat veterans and how they overcame the challenges of returning back to civilian life. These are actual stories told by actual veterans. Content warning, this podcast talks about war, and some of the stories in this podcast contain graphic events of violence and may contain explicit language. Listener discretion is advised. Additionally, these veterans are telling their story of how they recall the events. Some of the details may have changed over time. Welcome to Surviving as a Civilian. I'm here with my friend Nick. Nick, how are you?
I'm good, Scott. How are you doing?
I'm good. Thank you for taking the time to do this with us. I know Andrew set it up, and I'm looking forward to hearing what you have to say. So let's just get into it. How old were you when you joined the Army?
I was 23 years old.
And what did you do before you joined the Army?
Not much. Besides partying and drinking beer, I was a forklift operator for 2 years for Kodak.
For Kodak, the film thing?
Yep, the film place before they went under. I don't even think the thing anymore.
Where was this at?
This was in Rochester, New York, Western New York.
Okay. They seem to be having some issues right now over there. So what made you decide to join the military?
I know a lot of people have like a really good story for this part, like honor, personal courage. Like I wanted to serve my country, but I don't really have that. I think me and my friends, we were just partying too much. We didn't have a lot going on for us, so I just knew I had to make a drastic decision. I had to do something to get out of that lifestyle. So I decided to go to the Army recruiter and talk to him. Funny thing is, when I got out of the Army 8 years later and I came back home, they all had their lives together. They were married, they had houses, they had careers. So it's like they waited till I left, and then they're like, all right, let's get our shit together.
That's pretty funny. What made you decide to pick the Army?
It was basically the first. I'm not really sure. I think I just walked. It was the first recruiting office I walked into. It was the Army, and they started talking about jobs, and they started talking the typical combat engineer story. They're like, I want to blow stuff up and shoot stuff, and they're like, well, we got a perfect job for you, combat engineer. So that's what I decided to do.
So you joined at 23. Do you think joining at 23 helped you out better than the rest of the 18, 19-year-olds?
Yeah, I might have been a little bit more mature going in as a 23-year-old. I was kind of leveling off a little bit, even back when I was partying. When I was 18, 19, I had no motivation, no drive or anything. But joining at 23, I think was a good decision because I was a little bit more mature.
So you ended up, what was your first duty station?
My first duty station was Schweinfurt, Germany, with the 172nd Infantry Brigade.
How was that?
Germany is a very interesting place. I don't think I was prepared to live there at the time. I mean, you can't understand. There's obviously a language barrier, so you can't understand most of the people. But there's a lot of really good beer there, so I had a good time over there. We had a great crew too, so it was pretty cool. I would suggest if you are going to enlist in the Army, definitely travel somewhere, if possibly overseas, and do at least a 2-year bit, and maybe like Germany or something like that.
What was your job over there?
I was a combat engineer.
Was it mechanized, light infantry?
It was heavy mechanized.
Did you have to? I'm not familiar with. I've never been mechanized. What did you exactly have to do as a combat engineer in a heavy mechanized unit?
Well, in a heavy mechanized unit, you have ALB bridges. You also have the ACE combat earth movers, so like these big dozers that open up and they move dirt around. You also have D7 dozers. I'm sure you're familiar with those. And then and that's called your 1A and E platoon. And then you have your 2 line platoons, which are basically like light infantry.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. So the difference is you basically just ride around in a vehicle and do the same stuff, though, right?
Yeah, we did the same stuff. We did route clearance, and we did because we had the heavy equipment. We also did fob fortification, building berms up, things like that.
So you ended up deploying with that unit, then, correct?
Yes, I deployed with 172nd, and kind of a little Not really a lot of exciting things to say about that deployment. There wasn't a lot of action. There was not a lot of significant events. To give you kind of a idea of how uneventful this deployment was, in the middle of the fighting season on our FOB Cal Sioux, we had a parade, a legit parade, and the colonel was standing up there waving to people on floats going by, and soldiers were sitting on the side of the road watching them go by with their slushies in their hands. It was crazy.
What country was this?
This was Iraq, out of FOB Cal Sioux, about 20 miles south of Baghdad.
So you guys, no shit, had a parade on the FOB, or was it in the city?
We had a parade on the FOB, absolutely. It was unreal.
Whose idea was that? I mean,
Colonel 172nd Infantry Brigade Commander.
He just what was the event he had the parade for?
To be honest with you, I don't even remember. One day we didn't have a lot to do, so one day he's like, "I want to have a fucking parade."
And you guys did, huh? Did you throw candy?
We had a parade. I'm pretty sure they did throw candy. We had slushies. It was just a great time.
What an embarrassment. Oh well. So you did route clearance in Iraq though.
Yeah, we did route clearance. We did mounted route clearance, not dismounted. And the reason we never dismounted was simply because there's just nothing there. So it was kind of like just going for a car ride every day with your buddies.
What year was this?
This was in 2008.
Okay, so then you sent, so were you single when you went to Germany?
Was I what?
Single.
Yeah, I was single.
Okay, so you only did 2 years there in Germany?
Yeah, yep, 2 years in Germany.
And then one of those years was part of a deployment, obviously, right?
Yep, 1 year deployment in Iraq.
Okay, and then where'd you end up after that?
Then I PCS to 10th Mountain Division, Fort Drum, 3rd BSTB.
How was your experience there?
Very, very different than heavy mechanized. I remember when I first showed up, they heard that I was heavy mechanized, and I remember Sergeant Peralta started to say bodies, insinuating that I was just going to be another body to stack up. And I was like, all right, I guess I have to prove myself here.
That seems to be a trend with that platoon you were in. When I talked to some of the other guys.
Oh yeah.
So how long were you at Drum before you deployed again?
I would say deployment in 2011, 2012. I was there for probably close to a year.
Okay. And then your second deployment was Afghanistan, obviously, right?
Yes, Afghanistan and Kandahar, RC South.
Okay, what was your job on that deployment?
Okay, a little bit different. Not doing route clearance, but kind of the same idea. We're basically clearing. We were broken up in squads, and we were delegated to infantry companies, and we were attached to 132 Attack Company, and our job is basically to provide them with engineer support, like explosives or metal detection, clearance, anything like that.
And what was how'd that deployment go overall?
Overall, I think it was a rough start. I mean, our job was basically to walk around, wait for someone to try to kill us, but we kill them instead. I believe the other name for it is key leader engagement or some shit, but that's pretty much what it was. So overall, they're pretty solid infantry company. Working with those guys, I was pretty confident.
What was your overall feel of that whole deployment though? Was it did you feel like we were doing something over there? Significant?
I think we later on in the deployment, when we started building up triple strand concertina wire, we did a lot of that, almost down every route, and I felt like that moved all the SIG acts, all the significant incidents acts, and all the enemy out of that area, but I feel like we just moved them into another area. And I believe, like, when you kill one of those guys, they just get replaced immediately, it feels like. So even though we killed people, the next day we'd get shot at again. Like, I feel like they have so many replacements, so. I don't know. How much wire do you guys think you put in while you're over there? oh my God, I don't even know, kilometers upon kilometers upon kilometers of wire.
Just pounding pickets and stringing wire, right?
Yeah, when Student Sergeant First Class showed up, he was like, we're going to pound some pickets and string some wire. And Lieutenant Colonel Mintz, the 132 Brigade Commander, he loved it. He thought it was great.
How many pickets do you think Sergeant First Class Britain put in?
Sergeant First Class, I don't know. Probably not a lot.
So what from that deployment stands out the most to you?
There was a lot of combat over there. Like I said, I feel like most deployment we did really well. But there's one particular incident that happened on April 16th, 2011 that really stands out the most.
You feel like you want to share that with us?
Yeah, definitely. So it was this incident this day, we did lose 3 people. And I kind of, to be able to get through this, be able to tell the story, I usually use a little bit of sarcasm. It's not me making light of the situation. It's just the way, it's kind of like a coping mechanism for me to tell the story. So just wanted to get that out there. April 16th, 2011, we were on a dismounted patrol with 132 Attack Company. And we were patrolling southern Kandahar at a cop called Ahmed Khan. And just right outside of Ahmed Khan, there was a village called Zarafjan. And that's the village we were patrolling that day. So we'd already walked to the village, and we were actually on our way back to Cop Ahmed Khan. We were done with the mission, and we took small arms fire. And I remember we all dropped down on the prone. We moved to a cover and concealed position, and I remember one of the infantry PFCs was laying on the ground, and I could see the rounds impacting the dirt, and the rounds were impacting so close to him that the dirt like splattered up and hit him in the face. And he was like, "Oh shit!" and he fucking peeled back. And I remember I was scanning my sector, I was shooting, and I remember just stopping for a second, and I just looked over to my left, and I'm just watching this man almost die, and then he kind of peels back. And then I just go back to what I was doing. So that was pretty crazy. And after we got shot at, like that's what we wanted. We wanted to get shot at. We wanted to find out where these guys were. So once we got shot at, we knew we weren't going back to the cop anymore. Now we're going to do kind of a battle damage assessment. We're going to go back and see what happened. So we started to make our way back to Zarafjan, and we kind of got split up. The TTP, the SOP, Standard Operation Procedure, was stay in a file, have a clearance guy up front, so that way you don't step where you're not supposed to step, because there was so many IEDs in this area that you couldn't walk in a wedge, which is basically a V shape, kind of, and that's what infantry usually prefers. But because there were so many IEDs in this area, we can only walk in a file, which is just single file, like ducks in a row, like in school waiting to go into the cafeteria. So, but after we got shot at, I feel like people started to get excited. And that's when people started to split up. People started walking in wedges again. And we got up to we got almost halfway to Zarafjan. And I remember Collis, who was my team leader at the time, he was in charge of the sapper team that I was a part of. And he looked at me and he goes, "This isn't good." And I was like, "Yeah, because we've talked about this so many times. You just have to stay in a file. Like, don't worry about fire superiority. Like, we can easily gain fire superiority over the Taliban. We just have to worry about not getting blown up. Like, that's the main goal. Everyone go home safe." But I think we got a little bit excited. People started to split up. The platoon got split up in 2 groups, and they started walking in wedges again. And I remember Sergeant Collis went up to the medic. I remember hearing this, and he was like, "How many tourniquets you have?" And the medic was like, "I have a lot." And he's like, "Okay, well, just be ready, okay?" Like, letting the medic know, like, this is an ideal situation. Something might happen, like getting him mentally prepared. So we made our way to Zarafjan, And to kind of paint the picture for you of where we decided to station at, it was a kind of a courtyard. And on both our left and our right was a huge mud hut or mud building or whatever you call it. Behind us was the road we came up on. And out in front of us was kind of open up, like kind of a field and 2 buildings. So we all linked up there and we kind of all set up security there. We were in the middle, and they actually had already uncovered an IED because the guy stepped on it, and somehow, maybe it wasn't connected, I don't remember, somehow he just didn't set it off. So we, Collis and another one of the Sapper privates, they kind of bow-guarded that IED until we figured out what we were going to do. Their job was basically don't let anybody step on it. So we're kind of kneeling down, just kind of bullshitting, just kind of talking. Security was already set up. Nothing had been cleared with a metal detector or GPR or anything. And I was just kind of kneeled down by Sergeant Collis, and all of a sudden, boom, like this enormous fucking IED goes off. Like one of those IEDs that you use on vehicles, not dismounted troops. We were guessing 100 plus pounds. It was an enormous IED. To give you an idea how big this IED was, the 3 people lost their lives that day. The 3rd casualty we couldn't find. We had to use a helicopter to locate his body. Like that's how enormous of an IED this was.
So this was in the area you guys decided to set up security?
Yes. They were already standing on top of the charge where the security was. It was just a matter of who's going to step on, I believe, victim operated. So victim operated pressure plate, which is basically 2 pieces of wood with metal, and then there's a wire that goes to a battery source, and then there's help me out here. To a battery source. Yeah, wire that goes to a battery source, and what happens is the guy steps on the pressure plate, and there's a spring in there. When the pressure plate closes, the metal connects to metal, and it creates the circuit, and it sets off the charge.
It completes the circuit, yeah. How far away were you from the explosion?
Me and Collis we're pretty close. I'd probably say 30 meters.
Jesus.
Yeah, it was a big boom. And I remember Collis looked at me and he was like, that was a fucking IED. And I turned around and you could see the mushroom cloud and you can see like dirt, debris, like you could see body parts flying around. And I think there was like a concrete wall there. Like it destroyed the concrete wall. There's like a really small concrete wall, like probably chest high. It annihilated that. And after that, Collis decided, because everyone started running around, so Collis decided to stay with the first IED they found because he didn't want anybody to step on that. And now I have a metal detector in my hand all of a sudden. Keep in mind, before the fucking IED went off, I did not have a metal detector in my hand. I was not clearing. The metal detector, after the explosion went off, the metal detector was handed to me by a PFC. I'm not going to mention any names. And he was like, here, you have to take this now. So
why? Wait, slow down, Nick. So why? I mean, was it PFC infantry guy?
No, it was a PFC Sapper guy. I think he was just brand spanking new, and I think he probably knew either me or Collis were going to take it from him anyway, because we knew we were going to do some clearing for the medevac team.
Well, he probably didn't want the responsibility after something like that went off, you know?
Yeah, I get it. It's not for everybody.
So I'm sorry. I'm going to ask you a bunch of questions about this, Nick. So you guys went into an area that it was a building, right?
Yeah, there's 2 buildings on each side, to our left and our right.
Okay, so you guys went and occupied the buildings, right, to pull up security, right?
No, we weren't in the buildings. We were in between the buildings.
Gotcha. Okay, so and then nobody went and cleared the area that you guys, the infantry guys, set up security in.
No.
So the IED went off. As far as you know at this point in the story, that people are hurt. 3 people are hurt, or 2 people are hurt, or you don't know.
At this point, I don't know. I know people are hurt because I did look over there, and there was actually 4 people standing. I knew there was 4 people over in that area where the IED went off, so I knew people were hurt, especially with the size of the blast.
And then, still not being cleared, people decided to still run around and walk all over the whole area, correct?
Yeah, that's kind of where the story kind of picks up for me. I kind of ended up in the middle of this fiasco, kind of apart. We had like a small team of guys that were just kind of doing everything, and everyone else was pulling security. And I think what happened was, like, I remember seeing people running around, and I just yelled, "Stop fucking running!" And
what rank were you?
Sorry, what was that?
What rank were you?
A specialist.
Okay.
So I just yelled, "Stop fucking running!" And I saw like 3 or 4 people kind of looked at me like with their eyes really wide, and they're like, "Oh yeah, you're fucking right. We shouldn't be doing this." So I say, for guys who are in a combat MOS that haven't seen combat before, like I'd say the first time it happens to you, I would say my best advice to you when you handle that situation where you're experiencing combat for the first time is simply do something. Make that first decision to just do something, whether it's scan your sector, yell out distance, direction, and description. Just do something, and that kind of gets the ball rolling, and that kind of gets the adrenaline going. Because if you just kind of sit there, you see a lot of guys sit there for the first time, and they just kind of clam up, and they don't really know what to do because they're confused. But then usually an NCO or a sergeant has to run over and grab them like, "Hey, fucker, let's go." Well, my advice to guys experienced combat, just make the decision to do something, and that kind of gets the ball rolling. And that's what I did. At first, the explosion went off. I was handed a metal detector, and I was just kind of confused. And I just looked up, and I saw people, and I just said, "Stop fucking running." So, and that kind of got the ball rolling a little bit. So, the PL, the platoon leader in charge of the infantry platoon we were with, he kind of started to gather together a crew. It was myself as a clearance guy with the metal detector, the medic, and then there was a couple infantry soldiers that were with us. And I was kind of in front, and my job was now to clear 2 of the casualties, wherever they are. And I started clearing. We were in a file this time, and I got to the first casualty, and his injuries were pretty significant. He was a quad amputee. Quad amputee means no arm, no legs. And I cleared up to him, around him, and I cleared for the medic, so the medic and the other guy can kneel down and start performing aid. And I remember, I don't know why, I just looked down, and I kind of just like looked in his eyes, just to kind of see where he is at. And his you could see his pupils, they're really bouncing around a lot, but you could tell he just wasn't making eye contact with anybody. So it wasn't a lot of hope for them. There's not a lot a medic can do out there. He doesn't have a lot of resources. So when
Nick, let me ask you though real quick. So how far away from the blast was he when you found him? Or are you cleared to him?
Okay.
Approximately.
He was probably 10 meters away from the blast.
Okay.
And
so you had a visual on where he was.
Yeah, we could see him. We could see 2 of them.
Okay.
2 of the casualties. And then the 4th guy that was up there with him, he was very close as well, but for whatever reason, he just was unscathed. No scratch on him. Like, I don't know the direction of the charge, it must have just not hit him. And keep in mind, this is the same guy that I was talking about earlier, how the rounds were landing right next to his foot, bouncing up and hitting him. Like, this guy was extremely lucky this day. So I guess there is a kind of a positive upside to the story. But yeah, we cleared up to the first casualty. He was a quad amputee. And I started to clear to the second one. And
so how did they treat the first guy, though? Did they tourniquet his limbs?
I'm sure they did. There wasn't much left of the limbs. I'm sure they did. I didn't watch the first aid part. I was just focused on clearing at that point. So,
God,
yeah.
So was this the first? This wasn't the first U.S. casualty you ever saw, though, right?
That's a good question.
Well, it obviously was the first U.S. casualty you saw with this severe of injuries, right?
Yeah. I think I've seen casualties before, but nothing like this.
So what was going through your head at that point when you cleared up to him and you looked in his eyes and just kind of knew, you know, the worst is going to happen.
I had a conversation with him about 20 minutes, 30 minutes before he got blown up. And I knew he was. I knew he was from Texas. And I actually had a conversation with him. And then now to see him the way he is that shortly after, it was pretty surreal. Sorry, I'm just getting water real quick.
You're good, man.
Well, I mean, I guess that's the lifestyle we signed up for. But I had a lot of adrenaline going through me. So I was still pretty effective. I didn't get down or anything like that. I was kind of just focused on clearing the rest of the casualties.
So you got the medic up there. You moved to the second casualty. How did that go from the first one to the second one?
I don't remember much about the second casualty. I think I was just going to clear up to the second one, but there was already people kind of performing aid on him. I think the people running around, I think they made it to him before everything kind of got settled down after the IED went off. So there was already people performing aid on him. And I remember the guy who was up there with him that got lucky, that didn't get scathed, he looked at me and he charged his weapon and he was like, "Is that command wire?" Like insinuating like, "Is the trigger man here?" Like, and he started scanning out into his sector and you can kind of hear the distress in his voice. Like he wasn't doing too well.
You mean mentally, or he got concussed?
Yeah, he might have got concussed. That might have been it too. And I just kind of looked at him and I said, "I don't know, man. I think it was victim operated." And I kind of just moved on from there. There's kind of a lapse in my memory of what happened within that next kind of 20 minutes. From that moment all the way up until when the medevac helicopter landed, I don't know what happened. It's just one of those things where you forget bits and pieces of the story after so long. So I kind of skipping ahead. The medevac helicopter landed, and I don't know if you remember, but the beginning of that deployment in 2011 to 2012, the medevac helicopters did not need an escort. They can just fly out by themselves. Keep in mind, I'll explain why. I'll explain a little bit later why I brought that up. So the medevac helicopter landed, and it started immediately taking fire. You could just hear it, ding, 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 ding. It was just getting lit up like crazy, and at this point we're all like, "What the fuck? This day can't get any worse." So I was clearing, and one of the infantry squad leaders started to gather together like a weapons squad, like a small weapons squad together with like some M249s, some 240s, and some M203, 320 grenade launchers. And I remember thinking to myself, like, "Man, fuck this clearing shit. I want to go with them." So I kind of just put down my metal detector, and I kind of just jumped right in with them. And they're like, you got 203? I was like, "Yeah, I got a 203. A 203 is a grenade launcher." He's like, "Do you have 40 mic grenades?" I was like, "Yeah, I got those." And they're like, "All right, cool. You can go with us." So keep in mind, as it's happening, the helicopter's getting lit up.
Wait, hold on a second. Did you check with your team leader first, or you just hopped in?
Oh, fuck no. I hopped right in.
Okay. All right, go ahead.
I think at this point, he was just kind of like, "Just do your fucking thing." And he was kind of taking care of other shit. Because he trusted me with the metal detector. He knew I wasn't an idiot. He knew I would make sure that I'd take care of myself. But I kind of jumped in with this weapons squad, and it was the worst case scenario because the helicopter was like almost in between where the Taliban was shooting from a building farther out in that open area. It was almost in between them and us, so it was kind of a pain in the ass to suppress fire, to gain fire superiority. So I think that's why they were like, when they saw me with the 203, they were like, yeah, come on, jump in. More 203s, the better. And So the way we suppressed fire is we had to lob 203 mics overhead, kind of like over top of the helicopter and landing on the building that they were shooting from. So, and I think when I started that mission,
Wait, slow down, Nick. So the helicopters landed at this point, or
yeah,
still
the
in the air?
helicopter's been on the ground. Oh,
So you guys are on the other side of the helicopter, shooting 40 Mike over the helicopter at the building you think the Taliban's in.
yeah, that the building Taliban is.
That is crazy. And the helicopter pilots were okay with that?
Okay, so I kind of left a piece of the story out. Let me backtrack slightly. So the helicopter pilot landed, and the flight medic came out of the Black Hawk, and it started to take fire. Now, the flight medic's already on the ground treating casualty, trying to get him on the bird. So the flight medic called to the pilot and said, "Go, take off, I'll stay here." And the pilot called back, "I'm not leaving without the casualties." So, because usually the pilot takes fire, they're just going to leave. But he was like, "I'm not leaving without the casualties." So I thought that was pretty badass.
Yeah, we did have a bunch of badass fucking pilots, medevac pilots on that deployment. I do remember that for all the times that we had to load people in it. They were great.
Yeah, so there was a couple of heroic acts that happened that day, a couple of selfless acts, and the pilot was definitely one of them. And at that point I brought up earlier how the Apache or the medic helicopters didn't need an escort beginning the deployment. I think after that mission, they were not allowed to leave without an escort, without a Kiowa or an Apache with them. So I think where I left off, we gained fire superiority. They got the casualties onto the bird, and the third casualty had not been found yet. And at this time, the 132 Infantry Battalion commander had showed up on the scene with the sergeant major. Like, as this is all going on, they just kind of showed up with their security team. So now I'm thinking, oh, fuck, my adrenaline's rushing. I'm fucking yelling, cursing, and now I got to act accordingly because the higher-ups are here. I don't know how I'm going to pull that off. And I remember I was standing next to Collis, and the battalion commander, the battalion sergeant major, his security team, and our infantry platoon that we were with, they're sitting around, and they're trying to come up with a game plan on how they're going to find the third casualty. And the battalion commander said, we should split up in teams and spread out. And I remember looking at Collis, and at this point, my hearing is horrible. Like, I can't hear anything. Like, I looked over at Collis, and I said something, and he was like, "Clemons, you're really loud right now." And I was like, "Huh? I am?" At this point, I'm yelling because I can't hear myself talk. So naturally, I just talk louder because I figure I'm not talking enough. And Lieutenant Colonel says we should split up and spread out in teams. And I look at Collis and I go, "That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. We should be staying in a file. We shouldn't be spreading out." And Collis looks at me and he goes, "Dude, the battalion commander heard you say that." And Collis looks at me and he goes, "Clemons, I think you've done enough. Why don't you go take a knee and pull security?" And I was like, "All right, sounds good." And I just kind of walked away, and I was like, I'm just going to keep my mouth shut from that here on. So I think a Kiowa showed up and located the body, and then they went and kind of retrieved that. I'm not sure how they got the body, but that's how far away the guy was. Like, we couldn't find him. We had to have a helicopter identify the body. Like most dismounted IEDs, I feel like are generally around anywhere from 25 to 50 pounds of homemade explosive. Basically to blow your leg off or blow both your legs off. Not 100 plus pounds. 100 plus pounds, they're not usually made to throw a body a half a football field away. So this was a pretty big dismounted IED. So I think at this point we're working on our extraction. We're working on getting out of there. We're working on getting back to the cop. I don't think we ever did a battle damage assessment. I just kind of think there's a lot going on, so they just kind of nixed that. I wanted to see if we killed anybody. I hope we did. I mean, maybe we didn't, but I hope we did. But so we started working on our extraction, and on our way back, me, Collis, and a couple other engineers, along with the battalion sergeant major and a couple other infantry soldiers, were tasked with the job of carrying woobies and ponchos back with broken weapon systems and body parts and Kevlars and stuff like that, wrapped up in these ponchos and these woobies. So it's me, Collis, sergeant major, and a couple sapper soldiers and like a couple infantry soldiers. So for whatever reason, we ended up in the back of the patrol as we're headed back to Ahmed Khan. And I'm clearing in front of them. At this point, I'm just going to clear the whole way back. Even though I'm not in the front of the patrol, I'm in the back of the patrol, I'm still clearing. Because at this point, I just don't trust anybody. So I'm clearing in the front, and I look up, and I was so focused on clearing back, I lost the fucking patrol. Like, I look up, and
Wait?
I lost the fucking patrol. I was looking down, like, fucking with shit, and I look up, and I don't see anybody anymore. Keep in mind, we're also going very slow because they're carrying a bunch of woobies and stuff back, so we're moving slower than the rest of the patrol. The patrol left us. And now it's me, the battalion sergeant major, Sergeant Collis, and a couple other guys. Just out here in the open, there's like 5 of us. Out here in the middle of sector, out here in the middle of the combat zone. And at this point, like, you can't even see the cop yet. And I'm like, fuck, we got left. And I'm thinking to myself, you know, this whole day's been fucked up. If you're going to fuck up, go big, I guess. Like, why not? Why not lose the patrol? So it was crazy. And so I looked at I think one of us looked at the sergeant major, like, kind of looking at him like, what the fuck should we do? Because none of us have radios, keep in mind. So the sergeant major, and we're like, what should we do? And the sergeant major just looked up, and he's just like, just keep going. Like, this guy's so seasoned. Like, he just like, just keep going. Let's go. And so we just kept going. And luckily enough, we started to see the cop. And I'm thinking to myself, someone's going to get their fucking ass chewed for sure. I don't know why, but I was a little bit excited about that. I was a little bit excited to see a sergeant major start chewing ass, but it never happened. So, but yeah, we finally made it back to the cop. I think that pretty much sums up that event.
Holy cats, man. What a deal that was.
Yeah, it was a pretty crazy story.
What month into the deployment was that, approximately?
I think, what did we get there, in March?
Yeah, I think so.
So this was April, so this was the first month.
Shit.
Kind of like, welcome to Southern Kandahar, young man.
How'd the rest of the deployment go?
There was a lot of fighting, especially during the fighting months, warm months, April, May, June. There was a lot of fighting. We had a lot of activity. We can do another podcast another time. I can tell you about the story. First time I went to Pain, Calais. There was a lot of significant events. But after that day, I think that was kind of our big fuck up and kind of our eye opener. So after that day, we definitely started following TGPs and SOPs, and it went pretty well, I felt.
So okay, we'll do that then. We'll save what else you got for another time. But what made you decide to get out of the Army?
Okay, that's a whole different story in itself.
Yeah.
The reason I got out of the Army was actually I was chaptered out for no family care plan. And the reason I was chaptered out for no family care plan is my kid's mother kind of had an oopsie, and she got arrested, and the children ended up with me. And the family court order that was set in place said the child has to stay in the Fort Drum area, in the Watertown area. And so I couldn't delegate my child to anybody else to make the family care plan happen, because the mother had to see the child, and that's where she lived. So in order to make it work, I would have to like move someone that I know from where I live up to Watertown, and that's just not ideal. So they chaptered me out for no family care plan. And yeah.
Really?
I didn't want to get out, but it just, It just had to happen.
Huh. So what are you doing now?
So after I got out of the army, I've done a lot of different things. Um, well, I can tell you the story about how I kind of it was a rough start when I got out, and I kind of fixed it. I made the adjustment, and now I'm doing a lot better. When I first got out, I just don't. I didn't have a routine. I didn't have any real goals. I mean, I was going to college for criminal justice. I wanted to be a state trooper. That was a goal, but I didn't have a routine. I was kind of drinking too much. I was kind of partying again, and keep in mind during this time frame, the kids moved back in with their mother, and I was only getting them every other weekend. And then I was doing a lot of drinking, a lot of partying, a lot of screwing up, wasting time, and I think I just felt sorry for myself for whatever reason. I don't know. I just got in a slumper. I just felt sorry for myself, and I got. Long story short, mother got in trouble again, so I got the kids back again. They told me they got to come, they got to go back and live with you. So I don't know if you've ever raised like a 4-year-old and a 7-year-old. Partying and raising children just does not go together at all. Waking up with a hangover and 2 children are screaming, making demands at you, like you get sick of that shit real quick. So I cleaned myself up quite a bit. I got a job. I bought a house. I got a nice house, and my kids live with me. And I've been working quite a bit. And I think another thing that kind of helped me through that transition, getting out of the Army, is actually a podcast. I was kind of by myself. I didn't really have any guidance. And I just felt sorry for myself, like I said. And I started to listen to this podcast. It was called Team Never Quit. I don't know if you've ever heard of that.
I have not.
Team Never Quit. It's Marcus Luttrell, the Navy SEAL from the movie Lone Survivor. Mark Wahlberg plays his character. Another Navy SEAL. It's kind of a similar setup. They kind of have guys on to talk about their stories. And he had like Medal of Honor recipients and Green Beret soldiers and Navy SEALs, like all these badass motherfuckers who have seen a lot more than I have. And they're talking about their story after they get out of the Army, and they're talking about how they're successful and they're happy and they're doing really well after the Army and now after the military. And I'm thinking to myself, if these guys don't have any fucking excuses, why do I have excuses? Like there's just no reason to feel sorry for yourself. There's no reason to have an excuse. The only person that's going to take care of you is you. And after kind of training, that kind of changes my mental thought. It helped out a lot. So now things are going really awesome. I know a lot of people say it's been a horrible year because of COVID-19. It's actually been a pretty awesome year for me.
That's great, man. I'm glad for you. What advice would you give somebody who's kind of been through sort of the same stuff you've been through? What would you say to them?
I would say if you need help, definitely get help. Reach out, whether it's to a buddy or to a friend. And also, you got to remember, like most people struggle after they get out of the military, but for some reason they don't struggle while they're in the military. And I think a lot of that has to do with when you're in the military, you're exercising, you have a routine, you're there with your support system, you're there with your leaders, your goals are already laid out for you. Like you're set up, for the most part, you're set up to succeed. And then when you get out of the Army, that routine goes away. You're eating like shit. You're not working out anymore. You have no goals. You have no direction. And I think people just struggle when they get out of the military because they just don't have that support system anymore. And what I would say is when you get out, set up a plan and set up a routine. Like I wake up in the morning, I cook breakfast, I go to work, I get out of work, I go to the gym, and when I get out of the gym, I cook dinner, read a bedtime story to my kid. Have a routine set in place, even for the weekends. Just have a routine and stay busy. Because kind of like veterans, I think the only good veteran is a tired veteran. Like they say, the only good dog is a tired dog. Stay busy, stay active.
Nick, that is great advice. I really appreciate you coming on and doing this with us.
Yeah, and I appreciate you calling me. It was awesome.
This is awesome, man.
Definitely would like to do it again sometime.
Yeah, I want to catch some of your other stories.
Yeah, absolutely. Only one story for today. It's all I can take.
It's okay. It's okay. I appreciate it. Thank you, Nick. If you ever need anything, you have my number now. Do you have my number? I'll give it to you here after we're done. And I look forward to talking to you later.
All right. Thanks, Scott. Take care.
Thank you for listening to this episode. Getting the message out about suicide prevention is a team effort. We need people to be brave enough to tell their stories. We need supporters to care enough to spread the word. If you have a story you want to share, please email us at survivingasacivilian.casting@gmail.com. And if you want to help share this project, like and subscribe to Surviving as a Civilian on Instagram and Facebook. The most important thing Andrew and I want to get across is that if you need help, get help. And if you can give help, please do it. The National Suicide Prevention Lifeline is at 1-800-273-8255. Until next time.